During a high school class project, my teacher told me it's unrealistic being a CEO. It's been my dream to be a CEO since I was 10, so I told her it is realistic. Follow me on my journey to learn what it takes to become a CEO.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Realistic CEO podcast. Today I'm here with Ned. How are you doing today, Ned?
Great. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for being able to come on today and allow me to interview you. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, what was your journey like to be where you are today?
Well, Mike, it's a pleasure and an honor to sit down with a new CEO,
Thank
yourself,
you.
And I've had quite the journey of. At my age, I've been the CEO of many different companies and whatnot. And for the record, my name is Ned Barowsky. That's spelled Barowsky. Born and raised in Holyoke, Massachusetts, one of the poorest cities and towns in all the 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And as a young boy, I saw my father, my grandfather, basically most of my relatives, and we had a big family in Holyoke, and they were all working for themselves. They were basically all CEOs, and they were chief executives of their work life. Not quite sure about their home life, but at their work life, they were the CEO. So that had a huge impression on me, and I recognized the work ethic, especially with my father, because I could see him come and go. I would go down to his plant and observe how he handled his employees. I heard him talk on the phone, making some sales calls, and it was in my blood. I said to myself, I'm going to always work for myself. I'm going to be a CEO. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do at the time, but I knew when the time came, I was going to be a CEO. I was going to have my own business. Little did I know that when I went off to college at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, I didn't know what I wanted to do at that time. But within a very short period of time, I had like an epiphany. I had injured my back when I was 10 years old, and I suffered from low back pain. And by age 14, my dad finally brought me to see a chiropractor. And to make a long story short, it was like a miracle. The chiropractor, first visit, first treatment, I felt like a new person, like the back pain had gone away. And I did have some follow-up visits. And that made such a big impression on me. I said, someday maybe I'll become a chiropractor. So after my first year at UMass, during the summer, I had this epiphany, I was into natural health, natural food, helping people naturally. So I investigated the educational process to go through and the whole academic program. And it was like overwhelming. Some of the courses I couldn't even pronounce, to be quite honest with you. But I found out what the requirements were to apply, and I did, and I was accepted and graduated with honors from the National College of Chiropractic back in 1977. If you can imagine that. So I decided I want to come home, be just like Dad, I watched my grandparents, my paternal grandparents lived within a mile from us, and he was just such a good son. It's like I had two sets of parents, and my grandfather had his own business too. Mm-hmm. So I learned from both of them. They had different personalities. It was great having like two fathers almost. Once I graduated from chiropractic college in 1977, I decided to come home and be just like Dad and be there for my parents when my kids were growing up, and so they could enjoy that. And when they got older, and I watched how my dad took care of my grandparents until they both passed, and And so I did the same thing. I was there for my parents when they needed me. They were there for me when I needed them. And so it was like an honor to be there, to be able to take care of them. In any case, I'm a young chiropractor. At age 25, started my practice all by myself down on Elm Street in Holyoke. And within 2 years, I was busy enough that I had to hire another doctor to come work with me. And things evolved over time. And within a 22-year period, I had hired 30 different chiropractors and I don't know how many physical therapists and PT assistants. And I had massage therapists. I also had neurologists and neurosurgeons, orthopods. They would come to the practice about once a week. We had enough patient referrals for them. And so I had a very successful chiropractic practice until 1999, when my family, I had 2 family members that had major health issues, and family comes first for me. No matter what, family always comes first. So I looked at different ways of how am I going to handle this, and I made this should be a good learning lesson. I made an impulsive decision to sell my practice 25 years ago already. And that was the biggest mistake, the biggest business mistake that I've ever made. I still love chiropractic, and so that was my initial journey. And I went on from there. One of the reasons I was able to sell my chiropractic practice was because I had started to invest in commercial real estate. When I was down on Elm Street, I bought the building down there. I had a couple of residential tenants, apartments on the second floor. I had a dental lab down in the lower level, and my practice was on the first level. Anyway, my practice just exploded down there, and but the area was not conducive to having a practice there. It was a lot of drugs and other crime issues in that area. So I moved my practice up by the Holyoke Mall, right on the access road to the Holyoke Mall. And instincts were, like, within 2 years, excuse me, it was 1993, this time I bought the whole property up here in 1999. And that's what secured the fact that I was going to have a steady income after I sold my chiropractic practice. So not only was I the CEO of my chiropractic practice with all the various providers and other administrative employees, I sold that, and then I became the CEO of my real estate company called Barowsky Real Estate. And I dabbled into, I bought four large buildings in the central business district in downtown Springfield. And I found that there was a lot of crime there, and the practice was not conducive to there. So I decided to sell the buildings, and I made a big profit on that one. And so that enticed me to think, okay, this real estate business is good. So I've continued with it. I've owned this current property that we're sitting in right now I bought it in 1996, so that's like 28 years already I've owned this property. And you have to be a good CEO when it comes to commercial real estate. The big thing is knowing when to buy. You know, you just don't go buy it when the prices are high. You want to get yourself a good deal. So I was lucky to be able to buy the property at a fair market value, even a little bit on the lower side. And then I proceeded to expand and put wings on the building and reface it. And it's just been a great experience with the commercial real estate. So I'm still in it, but I've got a terrific property manager, and so that takes a lot of the everyday activities as the CEO. I have my property manager do most of this stuff, and I check in with her. And I, without mentioning her name, but this person has worked for me for 42 years. So it's another good example of take good care of your employees, and they will take good care of you. Good little friendly piece of advice. So, and anyway, I had a couple of large tenants. One of them was Pier 1, and they went out of business in 2019. And so I had, turns out I had close to 15,000 square feet on the first floor, and it was all during the initial phases of COVID. And I was trying to find the right tenant for it, and I'm like, nobody's going to be signing a 5 or 10 year lease. It's just not going to happen. You know, everybody's afraid to even go outside, you know, and be near people. So I investigated, and I found out that co-working type of facilities were becoming very popular, and I just thought it'd be a really great fit for my property because of the location and the tenant mix around here. There's a Power shopping center across the street, both other corners. I'm right at the corner. There's a shopping, and then you've got the mall, 1.6 million square foot Holyoke Mall. It's a tenth of a mile down the road. So, I'm now the CEO of Venture X Holyoke, and so we've just got another company to work with. But you really have to be passionate about what you're doing, and you really need to financially understand what you're doing as well.
So you said that you seen your dad and your grandfather, they were both CEOs, and you're able to learn from them, even though they both had different styles. So like, what were some things that you took away from both of them?
That's a great question. They both had different styles. My grandfather, I think the older you get, generally the more mellow you get. Okay, so he was kind of, he just had a way about him that people really liked my grandfather. And so his style was a little bit more laid back, and yet it really produced excellent results. So he was very successful. And my dad was my dad. Okay, so he had to really kind of watch me a little closer, and he was a little stricter with me. And I could see he was also a little stricter with his employees, you know, just a little bit more businesslike. Versus my grandfather, who was also very businesslike, but in a different way. So seeing somebody with a little bit more mellow versus somebody that's a little bit more aggressive or hyper, I hope that I kind of landed somewhere in the middle. And tried to get the benefit of both of them.
So also another thing is you said that you have to be able to take care of your people so that they take care of you. So like, what are some ways that you're able to make sure that the people that are working for you feel appreciated? Okay,
that's also a great question. And this is one of the things that I think a lot of CEOs miss out on. Your employees they are your business. Okay, one of the most important, especially being a chiropractor, service-oriented, if I were to ask you to guess who the most important person in the practice would be, which I won't put you on the spot, but it's your receptionist. It's the first point of contact. It's the first person that a new patient's going to see, and on an ongoing basis that the patients will see on a regular basis. That's who they relate to. Of course, you know, eventually you see the doctor after multiple steps, and you know the doctor's the primary person, but that first impression, people will actually walk out if they have a bad experience with, not even see the doctor if they had a bad experience with the receptionist. Of course, that didn't happen very often. I can't even remember if it did happen, but I want to make a point of how important it is to really take care of not just your receptionist, but everybody else that works for you, whether it's in billings and collections or on the administrative side, or if they're colleagues of yours, fellow chiropractors or physical therapists, etc. Any of the providers, you know, you needed to treat them with dignity and make sure that they're providing the same type of service that you would want to provide yourself to your patients. And I had a very heavy patient load myself, in addition to running the practice. So I finally hired myself an office manager, and we had a staff up to about 25 people at the peak. And we did it right here in this building on the second and third floors. So just be good to your employees. You pay them appropriately, reward them with bonuses. We always had like an annual holiday party. I'd bring them up I brought them to New York one time, to Boston one time. They really appreciate it. The better you take care of your employees, the more they want to take care of you.
So, as a leader, like, what are some characteristics that are important to you?
Well, that could go in multiple ways. The qualities, for me as a chiropractor, were, one, making a good connection with my patients, okay, and doing a great diagnostic workup on them, and then formulating a good treatment plan for them. You know, you can't help everybody 100% of the time, so, you know, you go on a trial program. If the patients are responding, you can continue until the point that they're better, and you can discharge them. And then there's a percentage that don't respond, that maybe their condition was just too far advanced before they came to see me.
So, why is communication important as a leader?
Well, good communication is extremely important in all aspects of your life. If you can't get your message across, people don't understand, you know, what your message is when you're talking to them, communicating with them, then the whole scenario changes. Whether it's with your employee, in my case with a patient, I needed to be able to communicate properly with them, and that's a two-way street. I need to listen to what they're telling me, and I need to process that, and I need to be able to respond to that. And then if I initiate something to them, I want to make sure, let's say it was my patient, and I made some recommendations, I would want them to show me so that I made sure that they knew what I was talking about. So it's a two-way street with the communication.
So, when you said that you sold your chiropractic business like out of impulsive decisions. So like when you did that, like what were some ways that you're able to like get back on track to being able to start your real estate business?
Well, I was already in the real estate business, but I think I was, looking back at it a number of years ago, I just impulsively wanted to take care of my family. Thankfully, one of my family members got better, and my dad was already 2 years into post a stroke, and he passed away within a couple years afterwards. But I was already in the real estate business because I had already owned the property here.
So when you're looking to buy real estate, like what are some important like key details about the property that you're looking at?
Okay, there's three answers to that. It's called location, 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 right? And once you find whatever you're looking for, if you're looking for an office building, okay, or retail, it doesn't matter. It's got to be in the right location for the type of business that you're going to open or establish. Okay, so it's location, it's number one. Then number two, obviously, is the cost. Are you getting are you getting a deal? Are you just paying market rate, or are you overpaying? Mm-hmm. Obviously, you want to get a deal. That's your you want the lowest price possible. But if you can't get that and you have to pay market price, then that's worth it too. And there are times where it's worth paying up for it if you know that you're going to own the property long term, because over time, if you're in a good area, usually the good areas will hold their value and increase in value over time. And that has been the case with the real estate that I've dealt with.
So can you tell me a little bit about the process of buying and selling properties?
Well, buying the property, it's like finding the right location. And then if you're really kind of new at it, okay, you may want to work with a realtor, a broker, to help you negotiate the purchase and the purchase price and that whole kind of stuff. And then 99% of the time, you're going to need to borrow money to go purchase the property. So you got to have a good banking relationship. So so those would be the main things. And I went through that. And every single property that I bought and sold, I've done it through that manner with a broker, working with the bank, and so far it's worked out very well.
So when you're looking to get a loan for a property, like what are some things that you're looking to make sure it's a good loan for you?
Well, the things that the bank is looking for is, number one, my credit. Am I going to be able to pay them back? Okay, and it depends if the building's vacant or occupied. So if the building's occupied, they'll look to see what the rent rolls are and whether that would support the loan. And or they may, let's say I just bought it for myself. Okay, so they're going to look at the value of the building. Let's say I defaulted and I was out. The bank's going to be left with the real estate, and they don't like to do that.
When you're looking to buy property, you want to try to find it for below or like right around market price. And then you said that sometimes you might have to buy over. So like, can you tell me like when you had to buy properties that were like above market price, and it worked out for you?
Thankfully, that hasn't happened to me. Okay, but if someone came to me and asked me about it, it would depend on how much are you overpaying for it. If it's 5 or 10%, well, okay, it's not a big deal. But if you're paying 20, 30% over market rate, it's going to take you a long time to catch up. But like I said before, if you know, let's say, I'm going to have my practice be here for the next 20 years, that's the time that I'd be willing to, pay up for it if I had to. Again, if it's not too much more, if it's an extra 5 or 10%, I prefer to get it at market value or below value. But if I had to, I would pay up a little bit for it.
So when you're buying properties, like what are some ways that you're negotiating the price to make sure that you're getting at a price that you like?
Yeah, so it depends who the seller is. It depends if there's other people looking at the building. So in this particular case, I had a right of first refusal on when I signed my lease. I had a lease here first, and as part of that lease, I had a right of first refusal. So if somebody came and offered to buy the building, and the owner accepted that offer, I can't remember, I want to say it was like 20 days to make a decision. No, I want to buy it because I had the right of first refusal. And that's exactly how I bought this property.
So another thing, as you talked about, you said family comes first. So like when you're working, like how are you able to make sure that you're able to balance your work life with family as well?
Maybe I should ask you that question too. That's a toughie. Looking back, I worked like crazy. I got married young. I had a practice at a young age, and I started a family at a young age. My son was born 5 days after my birthday, but basically he was born within 2 months after I started my practice. So I had major provider syndrome, and I worked my tail off. So I was at work a lot. And probably looking back, I should have spent a little bit more time at home, but I was so concerned about making sure that I made every extra penny a dollar, and it adds up after time. So I made it up by bringing my kids on vacation on their own, just with Dad. I did it every year for a number of years. And, but there's other ways of doing it too. You could be like a soccer dad and just go to all of your kids' basketball games or soccer games or tennis or swimming or whatever they do, and go to their scholastic events where their graduations and yada yada. So just be aware and be mindful to do your best to have the good work, live, home scenario.
So another thing that you talked about is how you want to treat your employees right. So like when they might come in and have like a bad day, like they might be down a little bit, like what are some ways that you're able to build them up?
Well, that happened quite often, actually. Patients would come in with quite a bit of pain. Okay, so the very first thing, if someone comes in, either they're upset about something or they're in a lot of pain or just life isn't good that day for them, right? So the first thing you want to do is acknowledge it to them. You know, just let them know that, you're sorry that they're feeling that way, and kind of connect with them. So it calms them down. It kind of makes a good connection with the patient. And then do your best to try to help them feel better. And hopefully they walk out feeling better and they have a better day.
So let's say you might come into work, might be a little down. Like, what are some ways that you're able to stay focused throughout the day so like it doesn't affect the people that your clients and also your employees?
You need to be, no matter how you're feeling, let's say you're having a bad day, you're saying whether you're in pain or you're emotionally upset about something, whether it was at home or somewhere else, you gotta just put that away. It does not exist when you're in acting as your CEO. You don't take out your bad mood on anybody, on your employees. In my case, it was patients. You did just the opposite. And actually, sometimes coming in when you're not at your best and working with your employees and working with your patients, quite often for me, it was very uplifting.
So when you go from working, like owning your own chiropractic practice to in real estate, like what are some similarities and differences between both those type of businesses?
Well, they're completely different types of businesses, but still as a CEO, you still want to use your management skills. Both companies have employees. Both companies require various vendors coming in to do stuff. In the commercial real estate, it's working with electricians and plumbers and roofers and folks like that. With the chiropractic practice, it may be vendors selling me various types of equipment, modalities to help patients with, and setting up the right software programs for your billing and collections and things of that nature. So it's working with all the peripheral people associated with that type of business.
So how are you able to network to be able to build a stronger network around you?
Well, I was very lucky because I came back to my hometown, so I had name recognition, and my best advocate was my father. He must have told everybody under the sun about his son just opened up his practice, and so he got the referrals going. But I joined the chamber, Holyoke Chamber, and I started networking. There was no such thing as social media marketing back in the day, so you did it in person. I would go to a different gas station every time I filled up with gas, and I'd give them my card. I'd go get a cup of coffee somewhere. I'd always run around giving my card out to everybody. Physical cards were really important back in the day. So I did a lot of that, and then I was about 2 years into practice, and I was asked to be a guest host and be interviewed by Willard Womack at WREB down on Suffolk Street in Holyoke, which is no longer there. And And the interview went so well that they asked me to come back again and again and again. I must have been on that show initially once a week, then every other week, then once a month. This went on for like a year or two. My practice exploded. Okay, the word got out, people came in, and that's when I started needing some help, and then I started hiring some chiropractors, and that was like a whole nother business for me.
So when you're building a team, like what are some things that you're looking at in a person to make sure that they fit your team?
That was a learning process for me. I started out by when I hired my first chiropractor. The gentleman was very bright, knew what he was doing. He was fresh out. Most of the chiropractors I hired were pretty much fresh out of school, so I would do my best to kind of train them into the type of program that I was doing. So when the patient came in, whether they saw me or the other doctor, they would get a similar type of treatment. So when he left, the next one came in, and this one wasn't really as bright as the first one, and he was okay, but I was looking for somebody better. But I was a little concerned. I didn't want to get somebody that was smarter than me. I wanted to be smarter, and that was the biggest mistake. So I finally realized my mistake, and then I decided I'm gonna find the smartest person I could. So I did. I hired someone who was number one in their class. They came in, and that was great. We made a great team. I learned from that doctor, just like that doctor learned from me. So we established a great team, and that's what I did. I had basically, it was a training ground. A lot of the chiropractors would stay 6 months, and they'd go off and start their own practice. But I had a number of chiropractors that stayed approximately 4 or 5 years, and then eventually, towards the end, I had chiropractors staying more like 8 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm. What is some advice that you could give to me to become a good CEO?
Well, number one, you have to be totally, you need to believe in what you're doing, whatever product or service that you're selling, okay? You have to be on purpose, okay? Meaning you've got to be thinking about your business. You need to be preparing for success. So there's work outside of being in your business. You got to be preparing for it. Whether you're ordering product, whether you're going to be delivering services, you need to be an expert in that. So you need to do a lot of background and be dedicated to it. You need to really love what you're doing. If you don't like what you're doing, do something different, okay? Because if you don't like what you're doing, whether the product or service is not really that good for people, then you're not going to feel good about it. But if you're offering a service or a product that is helpful to people, then that should make you feel really good, and you can go for the gold and be successful.
So, like when you're working, you're gonna have your ups and downs. Like, what are some ways that you're able to get through when you're down and just be able to fight and go push through that?
Well, similar answer I gave you before.
Mm-hmm.
You want to connect with, in this case, I'll just talk about a patient that comes in, is not feeling good. You want to first connect with them emotionally, just see where they're at. If they're really depressed or they're in a lot of pain or a combination of both, you want to relate to that. Acknowledge their pain, acknowledge that they're depressed, and say you're sorry that they're suffering today, and that you will do everything in your powers to be able to help them. And that's what you try to do, and hopefully you're successful at it.
So for the final question that I want to ask you today is, what's one fun fact about yourself that nobody really knows?
A fun fact?
Yeah.
That nobody knows? That's a great question. That's a great question. You caught me off guard on that one. A fun fact that nobody knows. I have probably started and either continue with or sold approximately 10 businesses throughout my career.
So thank you for being able to come on today and take your time out of your day to allow me to learn from you. So thank you.
Well, thank you for the privilege of being able to do that for you, and I wish you all the best and much success in your budding new career here.
Thank you. So, hey guys, thanks for watching this episode of the Realistic CEO podcast. See you guys in the next one.